Even though Rick and Morty is currently on hiatus, that won't stop me from making more videos. So Season 8 is definitely already written and production has already begun, but it's still fun to make pitches for these episode ideas. Same rules as last time still apply. We'll be using the Dan Harmon story circle to craft our ideas, and we'll be doing pitches for 3 episode types: serialized, episodic, and mixed. But this time I'm also going to read out some of your great ideas. Yes, you, the viewer, because no one knows what the fans want better than the fans themselves. So stick around after the pitches for that. Alright, enough expositing, let's get to it. The Smith family is eating dinner, as you do. We'll start in the middle of a conversation between Rick and Jerry, and they're actually really getting along. They're talking about the time they were Jericky and all the crazy stuff they did together. Good times. Jerry mentions that there was one thing they never got to do: ride a dragon. Rick immediately shuts this down. They already did that episode. It sucked, and Rick does not do sequels. But he does bring up something Morty doesn't even know. Rick actually stole one of the dragon's magic weapons from that universe and is keeping it in the garage. Morty asks, what does it do? Rick shrugs. I don't know, never even bothered to turn the thing on. They all want to find out what it does, so they all make bets on it. Rick is not playing into this. Morty makes the prediction that this magic weapon will be stronger than Rick's science, and this sends Rick over the edge. They make their way to the garage to test it out. It's a blood red staff, ominous looking. Without much hesitation, Morty grabs the thing and tries casting a spell. Almost immediately, a shockwave radiates from the staff, and through the entire city. Rick has accidentally triggered a homing device on the staff, and it starts summoning an army of demons to kill the Smith family. The staff hovers above the city, creating a force field around it, completely impenetrable. This thing is magic, and it appears to be stronger than Rick's science. No portaling out of the force field. Rick eventually figures out what's going on, and decides the only way to destroy the staff is to somehow get to it and reverse the magic spell that it's casting. But he can't do that until he gets out of the force field. The family gets strapped, and the entire second act of this episode is a John Wick supercut of just fighting through hordes of demons with every weapon Rick has in his arsenal. Imagine a Rick and Morty themed Doom. They fight their way out of the house. Rick and Morty use the ship to clear a path to the edge of the city. Everyone's kicking ass. Rick gets to the staff and releases the force field. Great, job done, adventure over. But before he can figure out how to reverse the spell, the staff summons the last enemy, a giant teched out dragon. It's Rick's technology. Turns out the dragons knew Rick stole something of theirs, so they stole something of his. They got the technology and reverse engineered it to create this super mecha dragon. Rick realizes the only thing strong enough to defeat this guy is magic. It's his last weapon in his arsenal. He's out of guns, and it's his last resort. Begrudgingly, he uses the staff to defeat this boss, and the family is saved. But at what cost? Rick lost the bet. His science was beaten by magic. The Smith family returns to their dinner. It's cold. Everyone is silent, and they're expecting Rick to just blow up, leave the room, because someone's gonna mention that he lost to magic. Rick senses this, and he just owns up to it. I'm not gonna freak out, I just need a minute. That's it. Jerry, you win the bet. Here's $5. He lays it on the table, then leaves. That went better than they expected. Rick's therapy must be working. So do you all remember that Season 4 episode where we were all excited to see how Rick would use magic when his tech got taken away? And it never really happened? What a disappointment, honestly. I wanted to give you guys an episode that brought back a few familiar elements, but make it slightly more interesting. When I wrote the pitch for this one, I knew I wanted to involve this huge magic versus science fight, but I needed an emotional anchor as well. It couldn't just all be one big fight scene. That came in the form of Rick's ego, as a lot of Rick and Morty episodes tend to revolve around Rick's massive ego getting shattered. This time, Rick finally accepts that maybe he's not the best or most powerful being in the multiverse, and maybe he's starting to be okay with that. Rick and Morty are tinkering in the garage, having a casual conversation about Jerry. Rick doesn't really care what Jerry does, but it does annoy him that he just doesn't try to be anything more. Morty just wants to see him put himself out there. He's kinda sick of not having any great father role models, and he just kind of thinks they should do something about it. Morty remembers when Rick wouldn't let him choose the adventure, and when he finally let Morty take the lead, it made him a lot more assertive. Rick refuses, he doesn't want to deal with Jerry right now. Suddenly, the garage door opens, and it's a few of the Ricks who survived Evil Morty's purge. Sensing the oncoming serialized episode, Rick says, "Fine, go grab Jerry." Jerry is excited he finally gets to lead something for once, and he takes them to a Western universe where everyone is a robot. It's a classic Western story, nothing too complicated, and Rick can at least appreciate the non-serialized nature of this. But he is starting to have second thoughts about this as Jerry embarrasses himself at every turn. They board a train because Morty's seen enough movies to know that this train is going to get robbed, and that'll be an adventure. Jerry suddenly admits that he actually overheard their conversation. He knows he's just a wet blanket, and he's come to terms with it. He's done everything he can to try and stand up for himself, break out of the rut, but they may as well just stop trying, because he'll always be a loser. Rick looks at Morty, and Morty shrugs. Well, they tried. They're about to portal home when suddenly, the train gets robbed. Rick and Morty are just kicking ass when one of the robbers punches Jerry. He doesn't fight back. Another punch. Alright, that one hurt. Another punch. Jerry is starting to get pissed. Having beaten everyone else, Rick turns around to see Jerry getting his ass handed to him. Rick swoops in at the last minute and saves him with some of his tech. Maybe the train is speeding around a sharp corner and Rick shoots a hole in the side of the train, and all of the robbers fall out. Something badass like that, you know? Suddenly, one really big guy moves down on top of the train through the hole in the side. New character, Chrome Killer. He's got some really advanced tech, and he quickly beats Rick to a pulp. Morty too. He takes one look at Jerry, and with adrenaline rushing through him, Jerry stands up to fight back. But this guy won't even give him the satisfaction. He's clearly not even worth his time. Chrome just picks him up and throws him out of the train. Jerry is now in the middle of the desert, completely alone and stranded. He walks for miles, looking for signs of civilization. He finally finds a ghost town, but it also looks like the scene of a mass murder. Robot corpses everywhere. Terrified, he looks around for anyone that could help him. He finds one guy, still barely alive. Cut to a scene at night where this character is dying. He's fading away. Jerry feels completely out of place here. This leads to a scene where Jerry has a real heart-to-heart with this guy who just fought for his life, and he survived. Through a quiet and focused dialogue exchange, Jerry's character is completely changed. What has he been doing with his life? Even though this man in front of him is literally dying, he hates to admit it, but he's jealous of him. His life had purpose. The man dies right in front of him, and Jerry reaches for his gun. Cut to Rick and Morty being held captive at an oil storage building by the Chrome Killer and his underlings. They strip away all of Rick's tech, and they plan to pawn it off to the highest bidder. Rick admits that they are royally screwed. Suddenly, Jerry kicks down the door. If he's gonna die, he's gonna take this motherfucker with him. With only a single gun, he starts to kill his underlings, and this leads to a fast-paced climax where Jerry is finally letting his anger loose and beating the shit out of these guys. He frees Rick and Morty, and they're all fighting these guys together. Rick, Morty, and Jerry have never looked more badass. Jerry takes a swing at Chrome, and he stabs Jerry through the chest. Still alive, Jerry rips the blade out of his chest and stabs him right back, Infinity War style. Chrome stumbles back, knocking over a few barrels of oil. While he's distracted, Rick throws a match at the oil around him and they portal out before the building explodes. Fade to some time later, Rick finally has Jerry all healed up. Relieved that his dad is okay, Morty leaves the room. But Rick stops Jerry before he also leaves. Rick, in a rare moment of vulnerability, apologizes to Jerry. Jerry's like, for what? Rick explains that he thinks the reason Jerry hasn't been able to get out of this rut is because of him. Rick has all this tech, and he's basically on God mode most of the time. Rick is aware that his presence is sort of like a handicap to Jerry, and he's been stifling him and keeping him from moving forward and making his own path. When you've got a father-in-law that is basically invincible, why even try? A little annoyed at Rick's main character syndrome in this moment, but still appreciative, Jerry denies this. He says, "Nope, I just finally ran out of excuses." He leaves the room. Rick has a newfound respect for Jerry. Have I told you that one of my favorite moments in Rick and Morty comes from Bethic Twinstinct? Yes, I'm aware, we don't want to forget that episode exists completely. Not a great one. But there was a moment in there that really got to me. Jerry turns into a bug ball because apparently Rick and Jerry got drunk together one night and just talked. That sounds like some amazing character interaction that I've been dying to see. I wanted to expand on that with this episode, where Jerry actually, truly comes out of his shell for the first time and kicks some ass. I saw a lot of comments on that last video and the community post that we want to see Doofus Jerry come back. Now, I don't read the Rick and Morty comics, so I wouldn't really be able to write an episode around Doofus Jerry just yet. But I wanted to give you something similar, where Jerry just goes hog wild and just beats the crap out of some people. Rick could gain a new respect for Jerry just seeing someone as anxious as him actually try something. Also, I just really wanted to do a Western story for some reason. It's not something Rick and Morty has done all that much, because it is kind of one of the most cliche TV genres. I can imagine a few designs for this new Chrome Killer character. I think he would look pretty cool. Rick is in the garage, cleaning out his old sub-basement. The family isn't home. It's another lonely night for him. Ever since Rick Prime was defeated, he hasn't really had a use for that place. Rick ultimately feels purposeless. Morty is starting to turn down more and more adventures, and the family seems to want to move on from his bullshit. There was always a method to his madness. Every adventure had a purpose. Find some missing part, build this machine, continue the hunt. But now, he's just out of excuses to keep running. Suddenly, Rick's signature green portal opens up on the opposite wall of the garage. Rick turns from his desk, stunned. Rick Prime tells Rick he's in danger, and they need to jump universes. Rick has no idea what's going on, or who this really is. For a brief instant, his heart jumps. Rick Prime isn't dead, he still has work to do. He takes a few swings at him, but Prime dodges every single one. He can't land a hit on him. After some back and forth, he figures out that this isn't Rick Prime, it's one of his robots. A scout, meant to scour every universe, looking for Dianes to kill. This is before he came up with the Omega device, an older model of robot. This Rick Prime bot found a Diane and laid the trap. He sent the bomb to kill her in the garage, but this time, instead of the weapon killing Diane and Beth, it killed Rick. The bot messed up. It couldn't go back to Prime, not after it failed its mission. Taking on a sentience of its own, it thought of a plan. It would remove this universe from the central finite curve to save this last Diane. After doing this, it ran, disconnected itself from Prime's network, hid in the corners of the central finite curve. Once Prime was dead, he came out of hiding. Now, he's in our universe to warn Rick of the oncoming threat. That Diane that was separated from the curve repeated Rick's arc. She learned Rick's tech, became a genius, and tried desperately to bring him back. Not another Rick from another universe, no. She wants to bring back her Rick. She brought her universe back into the curve and used a matrix of Beths to hide from the Citadel, the same way Evil Morty did to hide from the other Ricks. Now she's gone insane, moving into universes and consuming them like a parasite. And now she's coming for this one. Diane begins her takeover of this universe. She finds the rest of the Smith family first and captures them. She wants to use them as bait to lure in the Rick of this dimension because she believes he's the strongest Rick in the multiverse, ultimately. He's the one who genocided the other Ricks, the one who survived Evil Morty's exit. She begins to take over the planet with a giant ship that completely encases the Earth inside it. That's the scale of this invasion, and that's how powerful she's become. Rick has to team up with Rick Primebot to sneak into the ship to kill this Diane. So Rick and Primebot are sneaking aboard the ship, but Rick actually has an ulterior motive. If this Diane really is that close to bringing back her Rick, with their knowledge combined, he might actually have one last shot at bringing back his wife. Somehow, there's still one last shred of hope left in him. They meet this Diane, and she looks absolutely horrible. A human being completely broken down by a lifetime of revenge. Primebot goes for the kill, but our Rick stops him. He submits to this Diane. He wants his Diane back, just like she wants her Rick back, and she accepts this. We now have an unlikely team-up. Diane scans Rick's brain for the information, plugs it into the computer, and it works. The computer creates a program that can create any new universe, one where Diane or Rick is still alive. Right when the duo is about to create these universes, Rick pulls a gun and shoots her between the eyes. He looks at the computer and destroys it. Everyone returns home. The family is shell-shocked. Rick just turned down his actual last hope for bringing her back. He was right there, and he gave it up. Rick explains that he's moved on. He's learned in therapy that even if he were able to bring Diane back, he's not the same Rick he was 20 years ago. It wouldn't work. That Diane wouldn't love him anymore. It's the one piece of advice he needed to hear to finally move on from his trauma. Rick finally fully accepts the past and is able to move on. His new purpose is protecting this family. So this episode was by far the hardest to write. There's so much Rick Prime, Diane lore right now, it's hard to write a story that doesn't break any of the established canon. And I really wanted an episode with a Rick Prime bot. I believe somebody commented at one point that they think a Rick Prime bot should come back. And I also wanted something with one last Diane. The title of the episode is Last Sanchez Standing, but it can refer to Rick Prime bot or Diane. They're both the last ones. If I could fix this episode's concept up a bit, I'd definitely give something for the rest of the Smith family to do. I think this episode has a pretty good foundation, but it could definitely benefit from being a two-parter. I think the pacing is a bit off, but let me know what you think in the comments. Now let's look at some of your ideas. We have one here from Fembot Foxy. An episode where Space Beth enlists the help of Rick in saving her old crew in a fight with the Federation on Bird World. Bird Person's daughter drops in on the mission to help, and both Rick and Beth are against this idea. She sneaks onto their ship anyway, and they kick some ass together. Afterwards, they bring her back to Bird Person, and she tells him how much fun she had. This episode would touch on the theme of role models, with Space Beth filling that role for Bird Daughter, and Bird Daughter being like her cool space kid. I think this is a really cool idea. There's definitely an interesting dynamic to explore there with Space Beth and Bird Daughter being able to fulfill those roles. That's clever. Rick's motivations and actions definitely make sense too. He would not want BP's daughter following them on a dangerous mission. I honestly love this idea, it's great. Also, quick shout out to Tan Films Productions for also commenting a pretty similar idea. Cooper Hawk. Rick really hates baked beans. Yeah, I suppose you could turn that into an episode. The entire family is convinced that Rick is completely invincible. Rick gets drunk and tells Morty to kill him. Morty tries everything but gives up. He goes inside and starts eating baked beans. He accidentally drops some on Rick's shoe, and he melts like the Wicked Witch of the West. Turns out Rick never thought anyone would even try to use baked beans as a weapon against him, because the probabilities were so low, and they almost kill him. Rick goes on a quest to rid the multiverse of baked beans forever. Maybe he could try stealing the Omega device and using it on baked beans. I don't know, could be a fun episode. And Lean Beans OSC with our final idea. Zeep comes back, the dude from the Microverse battery. I can work with this. One day, Rick and Morty wake up with everyone stepping on Goople boxes. Weird. Rick barely remembers this reference. Once he realizes what they're doing, he figures it out. Zeep somehow broke out of the Microverse battery while they were sleeping, and contained them all in their own miniverses. Now it's up to everyone in the family to break out of their own universe. Once they do, it's revealed that this was actually a teeny-verse, and they're still in the miniverse, and they need to get out of the surrounding microverse. Basically, they're still one layer deep. They have to get out of this universe with the help of another genius scientist of comparable intelligence, and they strike a deal to let her come with them if she helps them get out. Honestly, I doubt Rick and Morty would ever do a sequel episode like this, but I like Zeep's character. I do wish he would come back for at least a small cameo. He'd definitely want to trap Rick and Morty in a miniverse again, and each member of the family would essentially be in their own simulation, and they would all need to get out separately. Yep, it's decided, we need Zeep back in some capacity. So, thank you to everyone who submitted their ideas. I could only choose a few, but I saw a lot of great pitches. Oh, also, I should mention that the first pitch had the entire episode detailed out, but for the other two, I just kind of ran with a one-sentence pitch and tried expanding it into a full episode. Let me know in the comments if you think it worked, what you thought of my pitches and our community pitches. Which of the 6 do you think is the strongest? So Rick and Morty might be delayed until 2025 for now. God damn it, I can't make another video, probably for a while. But that doesn't mean we can't find some things to talk about. This show is super complex, and I have a lot of fun writing these episodes. So, thank you everybody so much for watching. Thank you all for 2,700 subs. I did not have 1,000 a couple months ago, and the growth was crazy. So thank you so much for the support. I'm cooking up a really ambitious, possibly hour-long video, so I can't wait for you guys to see that. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.